fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Welcome into the show, Seahawks fans. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers after a brutal loss at home in overtime. Walk-off run by Josh Jacobs, 86 yards in overtime to close it out. Seattle drops it 40-34, and Seattle falls to 6-5. Keith, welcome into the show. I wish it was a different outcome, but here we are.
Yeah, the Seahawks for the second straight game, they had a bye week in the middle, but for the second straight game just didn't have the energy necessary, especially on defense. The defensive line and offensive line got pushed around. You can have all the talent you want on the outside, but if you can't win, in the trenches, you're not going to win a lot of games. I thought the team did a pretty good job to stay in this one and have a shot to win, but ultimately, you can't run the ball. You can't stop the run. You're going to struggle to win. And had it been against a better team, it wouldn't have been close.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you called it right there, just in the trenches, both on the offensive side. We couldn't get any push. Walker finished with 14 carries, 26 yards at 1.9 average, nothing else on the ground whatsoever. Gino had an okay day stat-wise, if you look at it just from a numbers perspective, but didn't get the job done down the stretch, didn't have the opportunities in overtime, and that's it. And that's the difference. That the turnovers early in this game, I thought, could have been instrumental had Seattle been able to capitalize, but they allowed the Raiders to continue to score in this game. You'd think scoring 34 points would be enough, but it seemed like the defensive old showed up in this game, Keith. The defense in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season with the defense we saw tonight, especially defending the run. Josh Jacobs was a monster. I got to hand it to him. One of the most impressive games I've seen from a running back. Had 303 total yards from scrimmage, including 33 rushes for 229 yards, a couple touchdowns, 74 yards reception, including the 86-yard run in overtime he didn't even get touched. And at that point, it looked like Seattle just broke down completely. Didn't have enough energy to continue to even try on that last one.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the Seahawks got out-physicaled. And that's a problem. You can't, you're not going to win a lot in this league if the other team is bigger and more physical than you are.
Including no pressure. No pressure on Carr. Oh, yeah. Carr finished 25 of 36, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did have a couple of interceptions. Andre Diggs, I thought, made an excellent play on the ball on that first interception. Got the batted tip ball in the air on the second interception. But it just didn't matter. It just didn't matter.
True story. It just didn't matter.
I thought Metcalf played well. If you look things in a silo, I thought that he played well. Was unable to make that instrumental catch down the stretch, unfortunately. You took they looked at that play. How many minutes, Keith? Like 7 or 8 minutes. It was crazy. But ultimately, weird. He did bobble the ball a little bit as he was coming down. Could have gone either way. Didn't go Seattle's way. We were unable to convert. Lucas down the stretch had a couple of sacks come through him with Max Crosby, which he just bowled around him and on a couple of things. And just didn't really have a chance to get the ball out, which is unfortunate. But it's part of football. Something that they can hopefully correct down the stretch.
Lucas handled Crosby throughout most of the game. You just didn't hear Crosby's name called much. But then, the last drive in in the regulation and then the drive in overtime. Both of them ended when Crosby just bulldozed his way through Lucas to get to Gino. I don't know if Lucas just wore down and got tired or what, but
well, he was sick coming into this thing and kind of questionable.
Yeah,
to start,
he had a good game until the end, and I think at some point, like, it was good to see him out there playing well for most of the game, but he really let the last two drives kind of get blown up by Crosby there.
So let's talk about your last text to me.
Yeah,
you kind of caught me off guard a little bit with that one.
My last text to you at the game ended was, does Seattle even make the playoffs now?
Well, it wasn't exactly that. It was, I don't even think that they can make the playoffs now. Yeah, something like that. And I was thinking, well, yeah.
Not sure Seattle makes the playoffs. Yeah,
right.
That's what it was.
Yeah, but I didn't know really if that's. I mean, there's still 6 games to play. Seattle wins 4 of those. We get to 10. I think that does it in the NFC. As a 7th seed. But maybe not. Maybe there's some tiebreakers out there. There's some. Everyone's kind of close in the pack right now in the NFC. There's 3 or 4 teams that aren't in the playoffs currently that could get in. Seattle lost this game. They're out of the 7th seed right now, outside looking in.
And that's the part where I said that, because I do think that the Panthers game is still a win. And I think they can get at least one of the 2 from the Rams, but that gets them to 8. They need to get to 10. So to make the playoffs, you've got to beat the Rams twice and get the Jets win also, or upset the 49ers or Chiefs. Like the path here is a lot narrower than it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, we were looking at this team, 2 winnable games coming up against the Bucks and the Raiders, and then that puts them at 8 with a bunch of games left, and the path was wide open. They lose 2 games to mediocre teams, and now, that path is really narrow for them to get to the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, should have been a win. I mean, you take a look at it. It's at home against the Raiders. They're struggling. Seahawks come in having dropped one before the bye to the Buccaneers. Could have easily won that game. Now they're dropped 2 in a row. And all of a sudden we're having question marks again about the defense, particularly as far as is it going to show up? Is it going to be able to stop the run? I loved the turnovers early. I thought that was, a great indication of how this game was going to go, and it just did not. The trenches kind of failed us in this thing, which is interesting to me. I think it's something we can fix in the offseason. I don't think there's anything we can do about it right now, mid-season, as we head towards the stretch. These guys are just going to have to play better.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much they can do other than just get more out of the players that they've got. And this is a group that was playing well before that Tampa game. They won 4 straight, all by double digits. They were looking dominant, and then against Tampa, they could not get pressure on the quarterback. And in this game, they couldn't get pressure on the quarterback or stop the run. Just the front 4 went from playing really well to playing pretty poorly for these last 2 games, and that's been the difference. Which
makes you question the strength of the offensive lines that they were facing in the 4 previous games. Were those pushover opponents? Let's look at it. They faced the Saints, the Cardinals, Chargers, Giants, Cardinals again. They were able to get it done in those games, and all of a sudden, Buccaneers, now the Raiders. Raiders have an okay offensive line, but it's not like it's special by any means. We just weren't getting it done.
Same with Tampa. Their offensive line's okay, but it's not great. And the defense just could not get pressure. They could not get any push up front. What it looks like is this defense is so dependent on Nuasu to get pressure that teams are like, okay, if we chip him, if we double team him, they've got nothing else. And it's certainly looking to be true that Nuasu is the only thing that Seattle's got going for them in terms of a pass rush. And so they're double teaming him and it's shutting everything down.
Yeah.
And then against the run, like even the announcers were commenting on it. Usually you run up the middle, you double team a defensive tackle in order to create a little bit of a hole. And then one of either the guard or center releases and moves up to the second level. They weren't even bothering to double team in this game. They were just telling, either the guard or the center to go straight to the second level and block Brooks. And that's why they were able to get so many yards rushing the game. They just, if they're going to do that, if they're not going to double team a defensive tackle, your defensive tackle better hold his ground and win there. And Seattle didn't. I mean,
I thought it was a clear step back for Seattle because, you throw that big long run at the end in for Jacobs. They averaged 6.8 yards per carry. But nonetheless, he was averaging 5 yards a carry prior to that. And then on the other side of the ball, we weren't able to do anything on the offensive side, being able to get any push whatsoever to help Ken Walker create some space so that he could get past the line of scrimmage. Kid only averaged 1.8 yards per carry, Keith.
Yeah. I mean, and this is 2 weeks or 2 games in a row. He averaged 1.6 yards per carry or 1.7 yards per carry against Tampa, and that's not a great defense. And then I've got him at 1.9 yards per carry in this game against, again, not a good defense. Like the interior of Seattle's offensive line was just getting destroyed in this game. And it's a front, the 2 defensive tackles for the Raiders, they're not special, but they were just winning every down against Seattle. And that's just not a good look.
Yeah. Yeah. We ended the game with 65 yards rushing. That's with Gino scampering a couple times. And it was just anemic. It really was. It was a situation where we needed some help, to allow Seattle to convert on third downs a little bit more efficiently, but B, keep our defense off the field. We needed those conversions. It just didn't happen. I'm trying to look at the time of possession. Yeah, found it. Time of possession, Raiders had the ball 42 minutes and 14 seconds to Seattle's 27 minutes. That's just not going to cut it, and that's including overtime. But wow. It's crazy. When we weren't penalized, we had 2 penalties for 10 yards. They had 7 penalties for 50 yards. We punted the ball 4 times. We allowed 3 sacks. Some of those were instrumental in stopping drives right at the end there, both in regulation and overtime. 4th down efficiency, they were 1 for 2. What did you think about the play at the end, Keith, where we were on the Raiders' 49-yard line and elected to punt with 4 minutes to go in overtime?
I mean, it's a Pete Carroll move. He's conservative that way, but honestly, as bad as the defense had been playing, it's 4th and 5 yards, not out of the question. I would have gone for it. I would have liked to see the team go for it there because sure, they punted, they backed him up. And what happened? The first play, 85 yards are right up the middle. The Raiders were getting pretty much everything they wanted as far as their offense. It was really tough going for Seattle's defense. So to try and pin them back and ask the defense to hold, I don't know if that's a great call. And so I probably would have gone for it. I would like to see the team go for it. At the same time, it's not like Seattle's offense was doing anything at that point. The last 2 possessions, they'd done nothing with the ball. And you and I are having this conversation via text, but they did give the ball to Gino with a chance to go win the game twice. One at the end of regulation and one it's in overtime. All they needed was a field goal on either of those 2, and they win this game. And in both times, it's like 3 and out. They could not do anything. I get
one of those plays came on the Metcalf call where it was ruled an incomplete pass instead of a reception. That would have been a first down and given 3 more downs to.
But it was not a good
only
throw.
Go like
the
20 yards for a field goal attempt.
The reason why it was in question and eventually ruled incomplete was because he threw it at the ground and made Metcalf dive for it. Give your guy a chance to make a catch. And he didn't. Now I get that, he's not going. It's not on him to block Crosby, and Crosby,
those sacks were brutal. Those sacks were not on Geno.
No, they weren't. But I would like to have seen him get the ball out of his hand a little faster. But ultimately, he had 2 chances to go win the game and failed to get a first down in either of them.
So he's 0-2 in those opportunities this year so far.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the overtime thing, that's tough. I think I would have gone for it. I'm with you there. I think that 4th and 5 with 4 minutes. I think there's 4 minutes and 31 seconds to go in overtime, as our defense was not playing well and they were tired. They were gassed. They were having to defend the run all at this point, since it's the second possession in overtime. All the Raiders needed to do was go down. I think that's what Pete was thinking to get a field goal. So he was going to try to flip the field on him a little bit. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't.
Well, yeah, because if you go for it and you don't get it, you're giving them the ball essentially at midfield.
Yeah, they need to pick up 20 yards or less to go for a field goal opportunity,
which is all Seattle had to do there at the end and couldn't do it.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's a tough deal. Pete's always gone for the situation where he's given his defense the opportunity to come up big, and in the last few years, over and over again, it hasn't.
Because he hasn't had the great when he had a great defense.
Yes,
it worked.
But he still makes the same choice.
He makes the choices as if he has a great defense.
Yes,
and he doesn't. Now, for a month there, we thought this defense had turned it around and had become a good defense. But clearly today, they were not a good defense in any way. That was a very poor performance overall.
Yeah, it does make me want to lean even harder into the draft and free agency this next year on the defensive side of the ball, for sure. I mean, a monster defensive tackle and another penetrating tackle and a edge rusher are needed, or another linebacker would be nice. So I was just reading too, know that Ryan Neal went out, looked like it was kind of painful for him laying on the ground there, ended up going into the tent. There's conflicting reports. John Boyle reports it's an elbow injury, doesn't know the severity. Greg Bell reports that it's a shoulder injury and doesn't know the severity.
Yep.
So we'll get some clarity on that soon enough.
And as of right now, the Seahawks hold the 4th overall pick in the draft because the Broncos lost and looked terrible doing it. Losing to a bad Panthers team by a lot.
If you watched any part of that game, Wilson has lost the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so forth.
Yeah. It's bad. It's bad there. Hackett needs to be fired, and he needs to be fired right away because the coaching staff has lost the team. But it's also kind of clear that Wilson has lost the team. He had guys yelling at him.
Yeah.
And that's a bad look for him too. I hate to see it. I love the guy. It helps it helps that his team keeps losing, but this isn't how I wanted to see that team lose. So
yeah, and you and I texted. I was like, I love the draft picks. I hate the what's going on with the person because you give a lot to the city and the team for a lot of years, and I hate to see a guy go through that, but he's going through it, and it is something, and it's helpful. It's probably the best news for the day for the Seahawks to get that. It looks like they're only going to win 1 or 2 more games, which would clearly put them into the top 5 draft picks overall, and could even end up being, close to the second pick overall by the time this is all said and done, if they continue to lose.
Yeah, the Seahawks could actually help their draft status by losing to the Rams, because that would push the Rams up in front of Denver as well and give Seattle the 3rd pick. Not that they want to do that, because a loss to the Rams probably knocks them out of the playoffs. So,
well, I'm going to wait and see. I'm still banking on 10 wins. I'm counting 10 wins, but anytime you lose in your division, that's not a good thing. I agree with that. But, if you lose to the Rams, you've got to go down and you've got to beat the Kansas City Chiefs later. And for sure.
Yeah. If you ever, any loss that's not to San Francisco or the Chiefs means you have to then turn around and beat San Francisco or the Chiefs.
6 remaining games are Seahawks at Rams, Panthers at Seahawks, 49ers at Seahawks, Seahawks at Chiefs, Jets at Seahawks, Rams at Seahawks. The good news is we've got 5 at home and 1 away. Right? No. 2 away.
2 away.
Yeah. 4 at home.
Rams and Chiefs are the 2 road games away.
Yeah.
But
so if we win the home games and we drop the away games, we get to 10 wins, Keith, and 10 wins, 10-7 in the NFC, depending on how the tiebreakers break. Seahawks, that could put them in. But you know what? We're sitting here. We were at 6-4 before today. Now we're at 6-5. We were in control of our own destiny. Now we're not. Now we're depending on other teams to lose. We're in that sort of scenario. And anytime you do that, who knows what's going to happen? So
this team was 6-3, and you and I were talking about 11 or 12 wins. They're now 6-5, and we're struggling to see them get to 10 and get into the playoffs.
So what are we dealing with here, Keith? Are we dealing with a team that is underperforming, or are we dealing with what the reality is that we are a close to 500 team, and depending on the way the ball bounces, give or take the opponent, we may win a few more than we lose, but we're still a mediocre team.
I think what we're looking at is this is a team that's better than we thought they were coming in, which we thought they were going to be bad and be 5 wins and a top 5 pick. But they're not as good as we thought 3 weeks ago at the end of that 4-game winning streak. They're a little closer to what we thought. Like, I think we changed our expectations.
As we should have.
But maybe we reset those expectations too high, and that's why they're going to fail to meet the expectations after we raised the bar on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is interesting because they played well enough to where expectations needed to be raised. And if they're not going to meet those, I think that's on them at this point. They played to an expectation level, and it's hard to win in the NFL, and they were winning convincingly. And that's really hard to do. Double-digit wins in the NFL are very hard to come by. I don't care who the opponent is. And they were doing that, 4 wins in a row like that. So, expectations were going to go up. And to have them not met in these last couple of games is difficult. And it does make you question, I think, specifically, what's going on with the defense these last couple of weeks, because according to Pete Carroll and everyone else, this team is healthy. These guys should have been at tip-top performance, had a week off. You come back, you're hungry, you're looking down the stretch, you're in control, and then to do something like this is difficult. Now, granted, Vegas came in and played a heck of a game, I thought. They did. They wanted it. They played well in the trenches. Josh Jacobs had a monster game. Derek Carr did just enough. He overcame those 2 turnovers early and didn't let it affect him. And they played well enough to win. So, anything else, man?
No. I just want to flush this game. I want to not think about it anymore. Let's come back and get ready for the next one, because the season is kind of in the balance at this point, and they better win the next one.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, it'll be really interesting just to hear what they say in the press conference. I'm sure we're going to hear we didn't get it done. We didn't get it done in the trenches. Individual players will say, I need to step up. We need to do better, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, Gino didn't get it done when he needed to lead the team. DK Metcalf just didn't quite get that catch. Ken Walker just didn't do enough to try to capitalize on any room that he did have. The offensive line, I think let the team down the stretch, and the defensive line as well got just overwhelmed.
Yeah, the interior of Seattle's offensive line, we knew it's been the weakness on offense all year, and it really showed up. It really showed up today. It's bad, and that's something that Seattle has to fix in the offseason. They cannot just kick that particular can down the road again. They've got to go out and get a center who actually isn't just smart, but can also meet the demands physically. And they've got to go upgrade right guard, or
it is games
left guard and move Lewis back over. But because between the three of those guys there, it was not pretty up front.
Yeah. I think, circling back to, and then we'll get out of here, but circling back to what we talked about at the beginning of the year was identifying players that you want to continue forward and identifying players that are not going to be with you. And these types of games, while they're hard to go through, better define what your team needs are going forward. And it's games like these that really do pinpoint the idea that we need an upgrade at center. Austin Blythe's a great guy. He makes great line calls. The continuity is there, but the level of play needs to come up. It looks like Jackson over at right guard has peaked as his play level. He's regressed. And he's not even a replacement level at this point. And so we need to, and we could do that internally. I think Haynes needs to start, or Curhan. He needs an opportunity. We need to be able to allow Ken Walker to have an opportunity. And so I would be in favor of Curhan out there just for the run blocking and see if he can do okay in pass blocking.
I'd be all for making that change. Getting Curhan in there at right guard. We've seen it. It was ugly for a few snaps when he was there in one game, but then he turned it around and really became the road grader we know he is, and had a couple of really good series. But then, back to the bench because people got healthy. I'd love to see him come in, just give him that job, put him there next to the rookie, and let the two of them just open some holes, because right now the running game is dead. 2 straight games it's been dead, and they got to do something different.
Yeah, I agree. And, on the other side, we need to invest in the trenches. I think that's pretty clear. I think both, we did a mock draft last week, and both of us had clear indications that we wanted to be able to do that. And I think that this sort of game shows us that is exactly what we need to be doing. We need to get some internal penetration to get to the quarterback. And we also need some run stuffing guys in there to be able to rotate, because those guys just got worn out at the end there. Anyway, plenty of time in the offseason to talk about all that stuff. So, all right, let's get out of here. You can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hockey. You know where the show is at, but make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching or listening, and then share it if you like it. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWC Hawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.